You have probably eaten an egg this week. Maybe scrambled, maybe fried, maybe the kind with a runny yolk that you drag your toast through before you start your day. It takes 4 minutes. It costs less than $1. It is the most ordinary breakfast on earth. Gary Mitchell had eaten 2 soft-boiled eggs every single morning for 35 years. He was 64 years old, a retired electrician from Columbus, Ohio. He was not a reckless man. He was not someone who took unnecessary risks with food. He bought his eggs from a farm stand 2 miles from his house, a place he had been going to since his daughter was in elementary school. He knew the woman who ran it by name. On a Tuesday morning in August, Gary cracked 2 eggs into a saucepan, the way he always did, and soft-boiled them for exactly 4 minutes. He sat down at the kitchen table with his coffee and his newspaper. His wife Carol was in the garden. 9 days later, Gary Mitchell was in the neurological ICU at Ohio State University, Wexner Medical Center. His brain was swollen. His temperature had reached 105.4 degrees Fahrenheit. He had been unconscious for 6 hours, and the bacteria that had put him there had been living inside one of those eggs before it ever left the hen. He had done nothing wrong. He had eaten the same breakfast he had eaten 10,000 times before. Here is the part that should keep you up tonight. The contamination route that nearly killed Gary Mitchell has been known to the FDA since 1988. The agency published guidelines about it. Food scientists wrote papers about it. And every single morning, tens of millions of Americans crack open a soft-boiled egg and eat it without any idea that the danger was already inside before the shell even formed. This is system failure. Gary Mitchell had worked with his hands his entire life. He had spent 32 years as a licensed electrician in Columbus, wiring houses, commercial buildings, the occasional warehouse. He was the kind of man who fixed things before they broke, who kept a toolbox in his truck long after he retired, who still offered to help the neighbors with anything that needed doing. He had retired at 62. Carol had been waiting for it. They had a garden now, a modest one, tomatoes and zucchini mostly, and they ate breakfast together every morning before the day started. The eggs were his thing. He had started buying them from a small farm stand on Sunbury Road about 20 years earlier. The woman who ran it, a third-generation farmer named Diane, kept a flock of around 80 hens. Free range, no antibiotics. The eggs had deep orange yolks and shells that were harder than anything you found in the supermarket. Gary considered them one of the small pleasures of his retirement. He soft-boiled them for 4 minutes every morning. Runny yolk set white. A little salt, a little pepper, 2 slices of toast. Same thing every day for 35 years. Carol called it boring. He called it perfect. Remember the moment he cracked those eggs into the water on a Tuesday morning in August. We will come back to it. The hen that laid the eggs Gary ate that Tuesday morning was healthy. That is the part that matters. She was not visibly sick. She was not a hen that had been flagged or isolated or treated. She was one of 80 birds on a small farm in central Ohio, and she looked the way she always looked. But Salmonella enteritis does not always make hens sick. It infects their reproductive tissue, specifically the ovaries and the oviduct, the tube through which the egg travels before the shell forms around it. The bacteria establish themselves there quietly, asymptomatically, in a hen that shows no outward signs of illness. And then, when she produces an egg, the bacteria are already inside it. Not on the shell, not a surface contamination you could wash off. Inside the egg, in the yolk, before the shell has even closed. This contamination route was first identified and documented in scientific literature in the 1980s. Researchers called it trans-ovarian transmission. The hen passes the bacteria directly into the egg through her own reproductive system. Gary could not have known this. There was nothing to see, nothing to smell, nothing to taste. He had soft-boiled his eggs for 4 minutes his entire adult life. He knew that 4 minutes set the white and left the yolk runny. He liked it that way. What he did not know, what almost nobody who eats soft-boiled eggs knows, is that 4 minutes is not enough to reach the internal temperature required to kill Salmonella in the yolk. The white was cooked, the yolk was warm, the bacteria were alive. Here is what happens inside your body when you swallow Salmonella enteritidis. The bacteria survive your stomach acid, not all of them, but enough. They reach your small intestine, where they do something precise and efficient. They attach themselves to the cells lining the intestinal wall and begin to invade them. Your immune system responds immediately. White blood cells flood the area. Your intestinal lining becomes inflamed. You develop cramping, nausea, diarrhea. Your body is doing exactly what it is supposed to do, trying to flush the bacteria out before they can go any further. Or further. In most healthy adults under 60, that is where it ends. 3 to 7 days of misery and then recovery. But here is what changes as you get older. Your immune response slows. The barriers that prevent bacteria from crossing from your intestine into your bloodstream become less reliable, and Salmonella enteritidis is specifically adapted to exploit that. In older adults, the bacteria can breach the intestinal wall and enter the bloodstream. This is called Salmonella bacteremia. Once in the blood, the bacteria travel freely to your liver, your spleen, your kidneys, and sometimes, not often, but often enough, they reach the blood-brain barrier. The blood-brain barrier is the system your body uses to protect the brain from pathogens in the bloodstream. In younger people, it is highly effective. In people over 60, it can be crossed. When Salmonella crosses it, the bacteria enter the fluid surrounding the brain and begin to multiply there. This is called bacterial meningitis. And in adults over 65, the mortality rate from Salmonella meningitis sits above 30%, even with treatment. Gary's symptoms started on day 3. A stomachache first. Nothing unusual. He had eaten a rich dinner the night before and assumed it was that. He took an antacid and went to bed early. By the following morning, he had diarrhea and a low fever. Carol brought him toast and ginger ale and told him it was probably a stomach bug. He agreed. He stayed on the couch, drank fluids, assumed he would be better by the weekend. By day 5, the fever had climbed to 101.8 degrees Fahrenheit. He had no appetite. He was dizzy when he stood up. Carol called their family doctor's office. The nurse asked about symptoms and said it sounded like gastroenteritis and recommended continuing fluids and rest. If the fever went above 103 or he developed a rash, they should call back. By day 7, Gary was sleeping 16 hours a day. Carol noticed he was confused about small things. He asked her twice what day it was. Forgot a conversation they had had an hour earlier. She assumed it was the fever and the dehydration. On day 8, he woke up in the middle of the night with a headache so severe, he told Carol it felt like his skull was being crushed from the inside. His neck had become stiff and painful to move. His temperature was 104.1 degrees Fahrenheit. Carol drove him to the emergency room at 2 in the morning. The emergency room physician examined him and recognized the triad immediately: high fever, severe headache, neck stiffness. He ordered a CT scan and a lumbar puncture, a spinal tap to test the fluid around the brain and spinal cord. The results came back within 2 hours. The fluid was cloudy. White cells were elevated. Bacteria were present. Gary Mitchell had bacterial meningitis. The emergency team started intravenous antibiotics immediately and moved Gary to the neurological intensive care unit. Over the next 24 hours, his condition deteriorated. His fever peaked at 105.4 degrees Fahrenheit. He lost consciousness. There was swelling around his brain, visible on imaging. The neurologist told Carol that the next 48 hours would determine whether he recovered without permanent damage. The infectious disease team ran cultures on the spinal fluid to identify the specific bacteria. The result came back on day 2 in the hospital: Salmonella enteritis. The physician asked Carol about Gary's recent diet. She ran through the past week. Then she mentioned the EGGS, the soft-boiled eggs from the farm stand, the ones he had eaten every morning. The physician nodded. She explained what transovarian transmission was. She explained that the bacteria had been inside the egg before the shell formed. She explained that a 4-minute soft boil does not bring the yolk to a temperature that kills Salmonella. Carol asked whether the eggs from the farm were contaminated. The physician said there was no way to know without testing. She said that in all likelihood, the hen that laid those eggs had been carrying the bacteria asymptomatically. She said it was not something you could see or smell. She said it happened more often than most people realized. Gary remained unconscious for 6 days. When he woke up on day 9 in the hospital, 18 days after that Tuesday morning breakfast, he could not remember the previous 3 weeks. He had significant short-term memory problems. His left side was weaker than his right. He spent 11 weeks in inpatient rehabilitation. Here is what the FDA knew, and when they knew it. The transovarian transmission route, Salmonella enteritis passing through the hen's ovaries directly into the egg, was documented in scientific literature beginning in 1988. By the early 1990s, the mechanism was well understood. The FDA and the USDA both had access to this research. In 2010, a Salmonella enteritis outbreak linked to contaminated shell eggs led to the largest egg recall in American history. 550 million eggs recalled from 2 Iowa farms. More than 1,900 people became sick. Dozens were hospitalized. Following that recall, the FDA implemented the egg safety rule, requiring large egg producers to test for salmonella, refrigerate eggs promptly, and follow specific hygiene practices in hen houses. The rule applies to farms with 50,000 or more hens. Diane's farm had 80. Small farms, the kind that supply farm stands, farmers markets, and local grocers across the country, are largely exempt from federal salmonella testing requirements. The eggs they produce may never be tested. The hens that lay them may carry Salmonella enteritis for their entire productive lives without any official body ever knowing. And the cooking guidance that the FDA recommends: cooking eggs until both the white and the yolk are firm, or until they reach an internal temperature of 160 degrees Fahrenheit, appears on food safety websites that almost nobody reads. Soft-boiled eggs are served in hospitals, in nursing homes, in assisted living facilities, to the exact population most vulnerable to Salmonella bacteremia and meningitis. The FDA has known the contamination route for nearly 40 years. The large producers are regulated, the small ones are not. And the cooking guidance that would prevent this sits on a government website, while tens of millions of people drag their toast through a warm, runny yolk every single morning. That is the system failure. Gary Mitchell went home 14 weeks after that Tuesday morning breakfast. He walked out of the rehabilitation center on a Wednesday afternoon in November. Carol was waiting in the car. He had lost 26 pounds. His short-term memory was still not what it had been. He tired easily. The neurologist told him that some of what he had lost might come back over the next 2 years, and some of it might not. He has not eaten a soft-boiled egg since. He told his daughter shortly after he came home that the hardest part was not the hospital and not the rehabilitation. The hardest part was understanding that he had not done anything wrong, that he had bought eggs from a woman he had known for 20 years from hens that were healthy, and that none of it had made any difference. Before you leave, here is what I need you to know. The FDA recommendation is to cook eggs until both the white and the yolk are fully firm, or to an internal temperature of 160 degrees Fahrenheit. That temperature kills Salmonella enteritis in the yolk. A soft-boiled egg with a runny yolk does not reach that temperature. Neither does a fried egg with a runny yolk or a poached egg that is still soft in the center. If you are over 60, if you are on any medication that affects your immune system, if you have diabetes, kidney disease, liver disease, or any condition that makes you more vulnerable to infection, your doctor's guidance is to eat fully cooked eggs only. This is not obscure information. The FDA has published it. The CDC references it. Your doctor knows it, but nobody tells you at the farm stand. Nobody tells you at the diner. Nobody puts it on the menu next to the eggs Benedict. And every morning, tens of millions of people crack open a soft-boiled egg and eat it the same way Gary did, because they have done it 10,000 times before and nothing has ever gone wrong. Remember the moment he cracked those eggs into the water on a Tuesday morning in August. The hen was healthy. The farm was clean. The eggs looked perfect. He had been doing this for 35 years. The bacteria had been inside before the shell even closed. You have probably eaten an egg this week. So had he. This is system failure. I will see you in the next waiting room.